It's Jeremy from jeremy.net. So, a while back, a long while ago, probably a few months ago, a viewer, Ryan, wrote me in and asked a question. And I answered his question in the comments directly, but I also intimated that I was probably going to do a video posted on this topic at some point down the line, and I realized I never got around to it. So, the question that he asked was one, how did I get started as a creative professional? And two, is it possible to be too old to break into art? He mentioned that he was in his 30s now and just starting to get serious about studying art and hadn't been working in a creative field beforehand and wondering, well, is it possible to get started? And I'll start with the easy question first, same way I answered it when I answered his directly, which is no, you're never too old to break in. The fact of the matter is that if your portfolio is good and you can hit your deadline, that's all employers really care about. And to be honest, sometimes being older can be to your benefit because your work is then informed by life experience. You can add some richness and depth to it. Now, to answer my specific question, how I got started as a creative professional, I got hired for my first serious professional job during my senior year in college. I went to UCLA. I was a fine art major, and that program is not an illustration program. It's a fine art program geared towards the gallery system. And they don't really have an illustration program, so I ended up starting to take more classes in the animation program as my elective classes. And it was kind of difficult for me navigating the program only because I didn't really see myself fitting into the gallery system. I really am much more of an illustrator and a visual storyteller than I am a fine art gallery artist. So during my senior year, there was a design firm that had been visiting our school on a recruitment trip. They were just looking around looking for artists to do concept work and storyboards for an internal intellectual property they were developing. And I was one of the few people in the program whose portfolio showed that kind of work. I had some comic book samples in there already and character designs. My paintings just tended to be more illustrative as opposed to conceptual. So my drawing instructor at the time gave me their contact info, or I think he gave them my contact info. But he also gave me their information and an endorsement, told me to take my portfolio over there. I went to see them, had a brief interview, and I was in. Now, it was challenging to negotiate my schedule a bit because I was still finishing my last year of school. I was also on an athletic scholarship, so I had track practice every afternoon. And on top of that, I was also an intern at Nickelodeon Animation. And Nickelodeon had been pretty flexible with my schedule. Like, as opposed to being there every day for a few hours, I was there twice a week for the entire workday. So I was able to work that through. And after I finished school and graduated, I didn't get hired on this Nickelodeon, so I stayed on at this design firm. And the project I worked on used all the skills that I had been developing over time. I was doing storyboarding, character design, I was even doing a little bit of traditional animation. I did not have much of a graphic design background back then, but I was learning a tremendous amount about graphic design while working there because while the project I was doing was intellectual property and they were looking at developing something for film and animation, their main work was doing DVDs, DVD menus, and a lot of graphic design work. And so I was around a tremendous number of extremely talented designers. The owner of the company is and continues to be a brilliant interactive designer, and I learned a lot just from being in that environment. Now, a few years, I think maybe a year after I'd been out of school working there were some layoffs at the company, and there were no hard feelings. It was completely one of those, downsizing. The market was turning a little bit. They didn't have as many clients. And I ended up, one of the art directors in the company who went to bat for me and really wanted to keep me on, helped me find my next gig. And from there, I just ended up moving on from one gig to another. And sometimes they were short gigs, 6 to 18 months. Some jobs were oriented towards animation. Some only had a little bit of drawing or graphic design. Some were web design. And I would just, keep moving from project to project, learn some new skills on each one. What's funny is now my current day job, I'm a senior designer at a toy company, but only about 10 to 20% of my time is really spent drawing. Most of the job is applying style guide artwork from licensed properties onto existing products that have been developed. So it's creative, but it's not the same as drawing and painting every day and doing actual illustration. It is very hard to find art jobs that are purely illustration these days. The best advice I can give to someone looking to become a creative professional is to look into internships. Most art programs will usually have something where you take at least one internship before you graduate, maybe even one internship, per year. I would advise to take as many internships as you possibly can. Like if you could take one every semester, do it. And there's multiple reasons why this is a really good idea. First off, each place that you intern at is giving you a leg up on the interviewing process when you graduate. If you have a portfolio that's just as good as another artist, but they already know what it's like to work with you, and they already know that you understand their internal processes because every workplace is different, they're going to have less training they have to do. They know that you understand their needs better. And now imagine having that advantage at, say, 4 different companies because you've taken a semester every year, or 5 or 6 if you've done multiple internships throughout your education. The hardest part of graduating any college program is finding that first job. It's 10 times harder for artists, so every advantage counts. So that's the first thing. The second thing, the reason why I advise taking internships is because you're interviewing the career as much as the career is interviewing you. You might really, really think that you want to go into video game concept artwork, but then after working at a company for a semester, you may realize that it's not for you. If you're still in school, you can adjust. You can take classes in other fields. You can apply for internships in other fields. You might discover you have a passion for architecture or storyboarding or photography. You might even decide that you want to teach art. So taking internships in multiple creative fields really gives you a chance to try on several careers and see how they fit while you're still in school. The third reason why I advise taking as many internships as possible is because what they teach you in school is never really the same as the reality of a workplace environment. Doesn't mean that your teachers are bad, doesn't mean they're dumb, they don't know anything. They know a tremendous amount, hopefully. But art schools have the unenviable task of trying to systematize creativity to give students a general set of tools that will hopefully be useful out in the world. But almost every company has their own way of doing things. Even within the same industry, many companies have their own proprietary software and workflows, and more importantly, each company has its own creative culture, depending on their size, the location, the people who run the organization, and those heavily influence how things get done. That's something that can't be taught. The only way to learn it is to dive into a workplace and get the experience. I also believe that being exposed to multiple creative cultures is great for making you a well-rounded creative individual. In the same way you shouldn't look at just one style of artwork. All different historical and contemporary art movements have something to teach us, and what makes someone unique is the ability of mixing it up, being able to grab something from the Impressionists and adding it to manga, combining things in ways people have never seen before. Creative cultures are the same way. You can, throughout your career, move from one environment to another, and hopefully, when you find a place that you stay at for a long time, you're bringing the best of the things you've learned from all those creative cultures to add to the place you're at now and make that even better. That's it for now. You can check out my website, jeremy.net. That's GERIMI.net. That's where you can buy my comic books and artwork. You can also sign up for my free weekly newsletter to get a behind-the-scenes look at my creative process, updates on new comic books and artwork releases, and upcoming comic book convention appearances. Okay, go be creative.